Hi, everyone. We're glad you can join us here on Twitter Spaces, our podcast, and other platforms for our discussion on Black History Month, a conversation with some of Las Vegas's influential and inspiring African American leaders. I'm Sue Levitt, producer with the City of Las Vegas. Every February during Black History Month, people in the United States celebrate the achievements and history of African Americans. Black History Month is a time for recognizing African Americans' central role in U.S. history. Other countries such as Canada, Germany, Ireland, and UK and the Netherlands have joined the US in celebrating Black people and their contribution to history and culture. When it comes to discussing Black history in Las Vegas, we have to start where it all began, the historic West Side. Today, we're joined by some prominent members of the Las Vegas Black community to discuss Black History Month and the history of the Black community in Las Vegas, from the importance and history of the historic West Side to desegregation of the city and the culture, economic, and governmental impact African Americans have made in the community. Now, I would like to introduce our speakers. First, we're hoping that Lawrence Weekly is going to join us in just a few. Right now, we have Brenda Williams and Claytee White that are joining me. So I'm going to start with Brenda, president of the West Side School Alumni Foundation. Brenda Williams is a significant trailblazer in Las Vegas for helping integrate the Las Vegas banking industry. Before Brenda, Black people only worked in non-service capacities. Brenda is also one of the first Blacks to work for the Department of Motor Vehicles. Brenda has the distinction of being the first Black female appointed to serve on the Las Vegas City Council and Planning Commission. She also worked for United States Senator Richard Bryan for more than a decade, and she's got some great stories to share about that. She finalized her federal career after serving 6 years as the Community Resources Officer for the U.S. Department of Veteran Affairs. Brenda is also the founder and president of the West Side School Alumni Foundation and recently honored at the historic West Side Legacy Park. And we also have Claytee White, Director of Oral History Research Center at UNLV. She collects the history of Las Vegas and the surrounding area by gathering memories of events and experiences from longtime residents. As one of the 5 founders of the Las Vegas Black Historical Society, she chronicles the history of the Las Vegas Black community that was established in 1905. Claytee received her master's degree in history from UNLV, and she serves on the board of Women of Diversity. She's also on the boards of the Mob Museum and blackpast.com. So we will get started, and we are hoping that Lawrence will join us soon. But I wanted to start and talk to Brenda a little bit about the recent opening of the historic West Side Legacy Park. I know, Brenda, you're honored there at that park. So tell us a little bit about that park, and it must be an honor for you to see this park go up.
Actually, it's quite an honor to be in that park, myself and my husband, for our individual contributions to the community. First of all, I was in awe of the fact that the park would be developed there on the west side. That is part of the new development and the new growth and the new direction our community is going in. So all of my life, I have set about to be helpful and try and do the right thing and project our community in a better light. And to be in this park is it's just remarkable. I'm in awe, constantly in awe, trying to wrap my head around exactly what took place and is taking place. To be a living legend, that's quite an accomplishment. And I am in awe, and I tell you, when I say that I am grateful to obviously a grateful community. So it's reciprocity in action. I mean, I did what I thought I could do to be good to the community, and they have reciprocated by acknowledging that.
And that's a wonderful feeling, I'm sure, and it's a well-deserved honor for you. I'm not sure if many people know, but you were the very first Black woman to be a bank teller here back in the 1960s. Tell us a little bit about how that was. That's a pretty big deal, I feel, to be the first Black woman here to serve in that type of position. You paved the path for many others.
That was an opportunity, actually, to have a job. I was unemployed, And I went to the bank. It's at Fifth and Gas. It was First National Bank of Nevada at that time, and saw a sign that says hiring and personnel is upstairs. It wasn't HR, it's personnel. So I went up and said, well, what are you hiring for? And they told me, and I said, well, I'd like to apply. So I filled out the application, and they says, well, maybe you need to take a test. Okay, great. Uh, when can you take the test? I said, I can take it right now. That's not a problem. So I took the test, and I guess they were shocked. And says, well, it's going to take us about 3 weeks to do your background check. And I go, well, I've been here all my life, so I don't understand that, but that's okay too. But I tell you, it wasn't like a civil rights action at all. It was purely economic for me. I needed a job. They were hiring, and I was shocked that they said they'd hire me, but never one to shirk in any situation. I thought that was a good thing. And to be frank with you about my existence there, it was quite controversial most of the time. I was met with hostility from my supervisor on the first day of the job. And I was told that they have to work with me, meaning the people in the bank, the employees, but they don't have to like me. Well, of course, this is the first day to work, so that in itself was okay. Well, wow, you're really going to be that mean?
Yeah.
So, okay, well, then I know how to handle adversity. Then I'll just show you. I can do better than anybody here. So, the first time I was at the teller window, the white people would come in the bank and they'd see me at the teller window. They gawked, they looked, and they wouldn't come to my window, which was fine. But eventually, some people started coming to my window, and they found that when they came to my teller window, it moved faster.
Right. So they thought,
So
hey,
yes,
we're going to go to
yes.
her
So
window.
and see, there was nothing at all hard about banking. I mean, it was simply debits and credits, adding and subtraction, and I owe a great deal of gratitude to my eighth grade teacher who taught us, the students at Westside School, certain students at Madison School, rather, taught us introductory algebra before we went on to the ninth grade. So I had
And
an
that helped
interesting,
you.
yes, it did. Yes, it
That
did.
helped you in landing that
Yes,
job. I,
it
you
did.
know, I wanted to bring Claytee into this conversation now because Claytee, of course, studies our history, and Claytee, just knowing the climate back then in the '60s, and maybe you can kind of take us back to that time and talk a little bit about what Las Vegas was like for Black people back then.
So back in the 1960s, so let's start at the beginning of the decade. March 26th of 1960, the integration of public accommodations take place. So meaning that now African Americans are able to go into casinos, go to shows, have dinner. At one time, Blacks could only go into the back doors, and that was to do menial tasks in those places. So integration takes place then, and it was earlier than the rest of the country. As you know, it didn't take place until 1964 in most of the country. So that's what it looked like. We had people who had been migrating here since 1905, major migration in the 1940s, and those people were tired of that kind of treatment and began to protest for better treatment.
And you also are pretty passionate about not just, history in general, but about the historic West Side and what that was like. You've talked about the Moulin Rouge and Jackson Avenue. Tell us a little bit about how that shaped Las Vegas.
So I'm passionate about American history in a way that includes all of us. So that's my passion. it's my passion to, when people start talking about the 1950s, the 1940s, whatever, I want them to give the full picture of what's happening. So here we had the Moulin Rouge. So I just said that in 1960, the integration takes place of public accommodations. So 1955, the Moulin Rouge opens as the first integrated casino hotel that can rival any of those on the Las Vegas Strip. Just as luxurious, just as plush, uh, great entertainment. Anything that you could find on the Las Vegas Strip, you could find at the Moulin Rouge. And I've interviewed people who were there on opening night and talk about what it was like, how luxurious it was. And that line of Black dancers were just phenomenal. People like Hazel Gay worked there. Hazel ran the dress shop for women there at the Moulin Rouge. So it was just an amazing place to be. Unfortunately, it didn't stay open that long because they say that some of the contractors were not paid for the construction. So therefore, it was closed. But we think there are other reasons that the Moulin Rouge closed, probably because of competition that they gave to the Las Vegas Strip. But even before the Moulin Rouge, there was Jackson Avenue, where African Americans owned all kinds of businesses. Like there was a malt shop, Johnson's Malt Shop, where Brenda Williams used to work as a young woman. Uh, so, so there were all kinds of businesses over there, nightclubs included. So African Americans did not have to go to the Strip for entertainment because they had their own cocktail lounges with gaming, own restaurants, a bowling alley. All of that was right there on Jackson Avenue. But African American business owners could not get the same kind of financing from banks, from Teamsters, from anybody else that other people could get. So our businesses didn't look the same as those other businesses because you just didn't have the financing. Jackson Street was a vibrant area of the community, and it hosted people from all other communities as well. People from all over would go to the restaurants on Jackson Avenue. So it was really, when you think about it in that way, it was the cosmopolitan area of the city because everybody could mingle there.
And Brenda, take us back to that time because, as Claytee was mentioning, you worked in the malt shop. Is that what she was saying?
Yes.
Tell us a little bit.
Yeah, that
a little
was
bit about that.
Johnson's Malt Shop, and it is on Jackson Street, and they had the best chili, homemade chili in Las Vegas. Everybody came to Johnson's Malt Shop. I met Cassius Clay, Muhammad Ali there when he first came to town. He came across the street. He stayed at the Jackson Hotel, and he came to across the street, and we talked and laughed and talked, and he was a nice guy, very nice man. But I think he was here just observing fights because one of the boxing trainers, his name was Chuck. He is the one that was responsible for Muhammad Ali coming there. But people from all over came to Johnson's Malt Shop to get the chili. And it was just a small place, but it was constantly busy. But my mother had to give the permission from the owner, Mr. Clay Johnson, give him permission to hire me because we were not allowed to be down on Jackson Street because of the environment. It wasn't conducive for young people. It was for adults. And then across the street from Johnson's Malt Shop, eventually we had our first bowling alley. So then it was great to, you could go down on the west side. That's when we thought that we were what back in the day would say, you thought you were grown, meaning you were an adult because you got a chance to go down and see the beautiful people, but you better be in the bowling alley and not out on the
and not going and doing that other
and
stuff,
not
right?
going. any further than that. So, yes, I mean, Jackson Street was vibrant. I mean, absolutely. We had pawn shops, bail bonds, uh, many eateries, liquor store, drugstore, you name it, hotels, uh, casinos, all there. We had a library at the corner of D Street and Jackson. Right now, that it's the home of the Muslim population. And so just about everything took place in that small area as it related to business. Okay. But I want to piggyback on the Moulin Rouge. One of my goals has been forever is to make people understand that the existence of the Moulin Rouge was not and is not the sum total of the West Side. The Moulin Rouge only lasted 5 or 6 months, but it was because of the glamour of the facility and the glamour of the people that it attracted. I think that's why everybody just kind of jumped on the bandwagon and made that uh, why people came to the West Side. But prior to that, there were so many people that made so many contributions to the West Side. That is why my foundation, the West Side School Alumni Foundation, decided that we would write a book about the people who actually lived and made major contributions to the West Side, whether they were maids and porters or hod carriers, bricklayers, construction workers, teachers, ministers, you name it, we had it, and they all made a significant difference. The maids and porters were the culinary union. The black people worked in the hotels. They saved their money. They bought houses. They built houses, even though the banks didn't want to lend them money to build their houses. My parents saved money, and when they finished building the house, it was free and clear.
Wow.
So
Wow.
yes, yes,
You had good parents, Brenda. I've read stories
yes,
about your mom, and
yes.
you had very good parents. You know, when we talk about these stories and we talk about the historic West Side, and like Brenda said, a lot of people go straight to the Moulin Rouge, but there's so much more that so much more history there. How important is that for us to preserve that and make sure that people know all of that rich history that's there?
So it is vital for us to preserve that history. And like when I talked about the Moulin Rouge, I said that it wasn't open except for a few months, and I talked about then Jackson Avenue. But there were also other businesses throughout the West Side, making it a vibrant community, neighborhood. There were boarding houses. So when we talk about that, the performers, those well-known, world-renowned performers who performed on the Las Vegas Strip, they couldn't stay there, so they stayed at boarding houses and other businesses on the West Side. At the same time that the Moulin Rouge was being constructed, there was Berkeley Square that was built, the first planned housing development for the middle class, and it is now on the National Register of Historic Places. So this was a community that had all of the amenities of any other community. That history is vibrant. Politicians came out of that area. Woodrow Wilson was the first person to serve in the state assembly. So when you look at the totality of the area, it's just like the history of any other community. And you have to then wrap the other history around this history. You can't leave out a significant portion of the city's history because this history was performed by people who were people of color. So it's just as important as any other history any place else in the United States.
And that's why it's nice we have people like you, Claytee, that study and make sure that these things are preserved and that people know that we know our history. And I wanted to just let everybody know that Lawrence Weekly is listening. He can hear, and we were hoping that he would be on here so we could speak with him. But he's on here listening, but for some reason we're having some technical difficulties. But anybody who knows Lawrence knows that he's such a great guy, and I'm sad we can't get him get him on here. He served on the city council and also as a county commissioner, and is just all around a great person and helps a lot of people in the community. One of the things he does is a lot of work for children in the foster care system. And so we'll have to do another podcast and get Lawrence on here. It's too bad we can't talk to him, but he's listening. And so let's go back to you, Brenda. So I wanted you to talk a little bit about your book and tell us about what inspired you to get that book going.
Well, actually, thank you, because what has transpired over the years is that our history has not been recorded. And I found that people were telling our stories, but they weren't telling the true stories. So, having grown up here and having known and still know quite a few people from back in the day, because of my aunt and my uncles who are in their 80s now, we were able to understand the resource that we had available to us. And we give these people an opportunity to tell their history, their stories, because they actually live the history. That's how we came about with the book, that we have living legends here who've never been given any acclaim to their contributions to Southern Nevada and to Las Vegas. And so that's how the book came about. And it's actually filled with stories and never before published photos of not only the West Side School, but the communities. The book recognizes the alumni and as many of the contributions as we could put together in interviews from the people who lived those experiences, either told or written by them. We thought it would be important and make a significant difference in the lives of young folks who could come up and say, oh, yes, that's my aunt or that's my uncle. Oh, I didn't know that a Black man helped design the West Las Vegas library. I didn't know that the first Black firefighter was Monroe Williams and James Walker. They didn't know that my mother during World War II helped make munitions for the war out in Henderson at the basic magnesium plant. There's so many stories that are told here. They didn't know that back in the day, in order to vote, Black people had to pay $3. That is called a poll tax. Mm. So if you wanted to vote for Roosevelt, who was president and running again at that time, then some way, hook or crook, and I don't like to say hook or crook, but people actually had to get together enough money to vote. That's why voting to me is so important. Mm-hmm. Because we don't have to pay. All we have to do is register and vote. So there are many lessons in the book. We talk about homes that were built back then, businesses that have been demolished that were actually a significant part of our lives. It's a place called Hamburger Heaven. Everybody went to Hamburger Heaven. The best fish, the best everything. And one day I went to church and Hamburger Heaven had been bulldozed. It was in shambles on the ground. And I'm going, oh my God, who did that? Who authorized them to do that? Why did they not consult someone in the community about that? And so that was even further testament to what we needed to do to help prove or establish the legacy of our community.
And that's what the Legacy Park does.
Yes, it does.
And Lawrence can't get on, but because of Lawrence and Councilman Creer, we have that park now that is highlighting all those people that Brenda just talked about and lots of others. 38 went in the first round. 21 will be going in again on Juneteenth. And it's because of the vision of Lawrence Weekly. He saw a park like this someplace in the South near his university, and I won't call the name of it. But because of that, he brought that vision back here. The county was able to donate the land, and then Councilman Creer was able to then get the city to work with the county and bring that to fruition. It is a beautiful place.
Yes, it is.
It is a beautiful place, and I wish that Lawrence could. I wish that he could talk so that he could, because he was very instrumental in getting that going. And it is important to show all of those leaders that contributed so much. And they also have a display at City Hall in one of our art galleries of all of the pictures of those people that are being honored there at that park. And so, Claytee, I just wanted to talk to you too about, Brenda was talking about her book and preserving all of those stories and things that people may not know about the Black community. How important do you think the work that Brenda has done is for our Las Vegas community?
It is vital. It is vital. We also added to Brenda's work starting back in the 1990s. We began to collect interviews from all over the West Side, portions of North Las Vegas, portions of the East Side. We begun to collect all of those interviews, as many as possible, and I don't have a count at the number that's been collected, but all of it comes together because now people can come in and listen to all of these interviews. They can learn the history from the voices of the people who lived it. It is so vital. It is important. So we don't have to depend on newspaper articles. Yes, we use them. We don't have to depend on what someone has written in a book. We do use that. But we have it. We have the history from the voices of the people who lived it. Brenda, her husband, Jimmy Gay, his wife, the Washingtons. We could just go on. Lucille Bryant, one of the second people that I interviewed about living here, working in the back of the casinos, and how, because of the Culinary Union, she was able to build 2 homes, buy cars, educate her children. So that's the kind of history that we are saving, that Brenda has saved by writing that book, that you can go to UNLV's library and actually read for yourself. And a lot of them are online.
And both of you have done so much to preserve our history, and especially Claytee, to talk to people that are still alive, that have those stories. It's so important to get those stories and get that history so that we know and we can preserve these things. And I wanted to mention too that Brenda served as she was the first Black woman appointed to the Las Vegas City Council. So just a lot of significance with what you've done with your life, Brenda. It's pretty impressive.
I think we need to go back to the appointment to the city council just to give people some background on how that came about. At the time, Councilman Lawrence Weekly had accepted a position on the Clark County Board of Commissioners, and that left a position for Ward 5 as city council vacant. So as a result, it amounted to taxation without representation. And the Nevada revised statute says that the city could actually appoint an interim council person. That's how I was appointed. So that a lot of people don't understand why that was done and how it was done. But that was an interesting thing, and I fought tooth and nail. I didn't want the job, but my husband talked me into it, and he said, "You can make a difference." You said you always want to do. How can I be helpful? He said, "This might be your window to help," and so I did accept the job, and I did the best that I could in the 2-month period that was there. One of the major concerns at the time facing the West Side was a major grocery store. And we, the people, did not have a major grocery store, but we had an awful lot of developers that were vying for attention to bring that store into our community. And so one day I just decided, well, I've got all these developers and their plans and what they will do and what they won't do. This is not my job to decide who will come in. I'm an appointee. I think that the elected official, the people's person that they select, should be the ones that make the decision. So I asked Harry Williams, who was my assistant and still is Councilman.
He is, that's right.
Yes. I said, let's have a town hall meeting. I think the voice of the people needs to be heard, and that's what it's all about. We need to involve the people in the decisions that are made on their behalf. Other times people just, well, that's what you elected me for. And I'm going, that's not what I elected you for. You never told me you intended to do this. So, but out of that came the decision that there were all some very good proposals that were submitted. The people had an opportunity to visualize their projected, what the store should look like, and give a short summary of how they want to go about it. And as a result, we saved that for the incoming councilman to make the real decision.
Well, Brenda, you've just done so much, so much.
Well, thank you.
So much and you too, Claytee. I could go on and talk to you two ladies all day, but Claytee, we probably need to wrap things up. Is there anything else you would want to add, just kind of before we finish our discussion?
So I'd like to add that there are never enough interviews recorded telling the history. And it makes no difference who you are, whether you worked in a casino in the back of the house, you were a doctor, you were governor of the state. It makes no difference. We interview everyone at UNLV, not just African Americans, but we interview everyone throughout the entire county, Southern Nevada. So if you know that you have great stories and wonderful history, you have great memories, we want to collect those.
So if people want to get in touch with you, how can they do that to share their stories?
Just call me at UNLV. My phone number is 895-2222. Very
Perfect.
Easy. Yes.
Perfect. And you're so nice that everybody will love you when they call you.
But this interview is not on the telephone. I actually make an appointment and I go and sit down with them and record it.
I love it. Yes. That's perfect. So anybody listening, you can get in touch with Claytee. You can be, like she said, anybody. She likes to take the history down so we can have that. So we're going to go ahead and wrap this up. We want to thank everybody who has been listening, for joining us to celebrate Black History Month. And for more information about Black History Month and in Las Vegas, you can visit lasvegasnevada.gov and go to our news and then blogs section to search the history of Black History Month. There you will also find information on different Black History Month events happening around the city. In fact, there's a lot of really great things going on, so you're going to want to definitely check that out. And Claytee and Brenda, thank you so much for taking the time today for this discussion. I really enjoyed it. And everybody else who was out there listening, thanks for joining and have a great day.
Thank you.
Thank you for having me.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.